Hello everyone and welcome back to part 2 of the agility heroes. Nailed it. There we go. Another perfect intro. We're going to pick up where we left off with my boy Nyx Assassin. Nyx Assassin is amazing. He's very good against casters and high intelligence heroes. He multiplies their mana to deal damage and remove mana. Multiplies their intelligence. There we go. He also has spike carry pace to stun people when they try to do anything to him. I'm going to put him at a 4-star. His spells are a little bit difficult to land, and he does abuse invisibility. Now, I told you that I do not recommend invisibility for newer players, just because I don't want people to become reliant on being invisible. Anyway, that's Nyx. He ganks, he rotates, he's a really good position 4, can be a position 3. You can even take him mid, or as the safe lane support, the position 5, if you want to. He's very strong. Really good stun. Can be a little tricky to land, but all in all, it's just pretty good. Moving on to Pangolin. Pangolin is another hero that I play an absolute ton of. He's really good as a mid and off laner or a position 4. He has the ability to disarm people, and he has a slow on his shield crash. He also turns into a roly-poly and rolls around all over people. His spells can be a little bit to land, so I'm going to go with a 3-star rating in terms of usability for new players, but he is very strong. He's very, very fun to play. Just go ahead and demo the hero, use his ult a couple of times, try to get used to maneuvering with it before you take him against players. PA. When this hero is strong, I highly recommend her. When the patch hits and the win rate tanks, I don't recommend her. Right now, she's pretty weak. When she's strong, she's very strong. When she's weak, she's very weak. Right now, she's weak. She blinks on top of people, she hits them very hard, and she crits them for 450% of her damage. And right now, there's a lot of heroes that are just good against her. She's rather low on the old HP, so if heroes that are strong at bursting her are strong in the current meta, then she's kind of weak. She did get a little bit of a buff in the sense that she can now break passives. It's a very strong ability, can definitely counter some heroes, but she's still kind of weak. Phantom Lancer. Phantom Lancer is, I'm going to put him at a 2-star right now, maybe 3s, just somewhere in between there. Phantom Lancer has a chance to make illusions of himself whenever he attacks. He rushes a diffusal blade to burn people's mana, and he kind of turns every single fight into a marathon of endurance between both teams. He wants to drain the entire enemy team's mana and maybe kill some of them. Once they're out of mana, your team can move in and win the team fight. But in general, Phantom Lancer gets a little bit weaker as you go up in skill level. When people are new against illusions, they don't know how to spot which illusion is the real hero. So as people get more and more used to facing off against illusion heroes in general, PL will get weaker because you can't rely on simple tricks to just fool players forever. You can't rely on having 10 illusions to make yourself invulnerable for forever. Some heroes are also very good against PL and very good at punishing his playstyle. Razor is a lane dominator. Razor is a lane dominator and kind of a carry. Razor steals damage from whoever he links to. He also has very high movement speed. He also has an ulti that reduces armor. He can be a tremendous physical damage dealer, but I put him at somewhere in between 2 and 3 stars again, because he's incredibly reliant on positioning. He needs to get good farm out of the lane. He needs to itemize well or he falls off incredibly hard, and he needs to be very careful with his positioning all the time. He's not amazing at split pushing if you compare him to other heroes, because he does rely on stealing damage from enemy heroes, which means when he gets to a tower, if he doesn't have a hero to steal damage from, he's just relying on his base damage. A lot of other heroes are going to build damage, they're going to build attack speed, they're going to build things that enable them to hit towers. Razor, sometimes he skips those items because he can steal damage. So, a little bit more specific, Definitely has a certain play style in mind, and if that play style doesn't jive with what you need to do in the game that you're in, then he can be pretty weak. He's also another one of those heroes where it's very easy to die an awful lot on and become useless on. Ricki, I'm going to put him on 2. Ricki turns permanently invis, and he multiplies his agi when he gets backstabs on people. Now, he has the ability to do a tremendous amount of damage, and because he multiplies his agility, he scales more efficiently than most other heroes do with their damage. But he also relies an absolute ton on invisibility, and once again, I just can't recommend that new players get too comfortable playing with invisibility until you're facing off against people who reliably buy detection. You should not use invisibility. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but there are so many people who just die like a noob because they don't understand that the enemy team can afford detection and is trying to hunt them. They're too used to invisibility being invincibility. And in the lower brackets, that might be true, but if you rely on it, you're going to trap yourself in the lower brackets. So don't rely on invisibility to abuse low-level players. You will not get better doing that. That being said, he is very strong. If you want to play him as a carry, you can. Be aware he's very, very low health pool. So it is easy for other people to just kind of kill him. If they can see him, they can generally kill him. So be careful with that. Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend's main skill in the laning phase is going to be Shadow Raise, and it's a rather interesting skill because 1 point in it levels all 3 of them. You'll notice he has 3 Shadow Raises. These are essentially different ranges of the same skill. This is a close range, a medium range, and a long range. They all have separate cooldowns, so he gets to level 3 damage nukes with 1 skill point. It's very, very strong. The hero has to be very careful with his mana. He can do a tremendous amount of damage, but if you waste his mana and you miss last hits, the hero also falls off quite hard. Pretty easy on him. He's a great recovery hero, and he has a tremendous amount of damage potential. He can go for physical damage, he can go for magical damage, and he can farm fast enough to buy a whole bunch of utility items. So he has some versatility in how he can be played, and if you really like the look of him, by all means go for him. Just be aware you have to lane this hero very well. His base damage is really low, but you still need to get last hits. His spells are incredibly strong, but you need to carefully manage his mana. Those are great skills to learn, though, so if you want to play Shadow Fiend, by all means, go ahead. Just be a little careful. Next up, we got Slark. Slark is a hero that's pretty typically going to build Terrorblade. Once again, a little bit of a warning about relying on invis. That being said, I put him at a 4-star recommendation. He has a very low cooldown purge. He has a mobility skill. His ulti makes him untargetable and recovers his HP, which can be incredibly strong, and he, more importantly, steals stats as he's fighting people. This means that if you're behind on Slark and you're thinking to yourself, man, I really need a BKB, I really need something like a Heart, maybe a Scotty, maybe an Abyssal Blade, I need Lockdown, I need HP, but I also feel like I don't have damage. You don't need to worry about the damage. As long as you are survivable and you stay in the fight, you continue to steal agility. He has a talent that makes him gain plus additional agility, so you will steal 1 of each strength, agi, and intelligence from the hero that you hit, and you will gain 3 or 4 agility with this level 20 talent. As the fight goes on, every auto attack that you land, you gain 3 to 4 damage and 3 to 4 attack speed. And that starts stacking up really quick. Over the course of a fight, you might land 20 or 30 auto attacks, and then all of a sudden your hero has like 400 damage and max attack speed. Slark can be very strong. It's nice because he doesn't have to build glass cannon ever. He can almost always, if you're behind, focus on picking up durability items, and then you just need 1 good fight, build up a whole bunch of S and shift, and now you're incredibly durable with a tremendous amount of attack speed and damage. He's very strong. Sniper. I used to spam support sniper, and I am a support player. I can tell you that support sniper is bad. Support sniper is extremely easy to kill compared to almost every other supports. It's lacking in burst damage compared to other supports. Don't pick support sniper. As far as core sniper, you typically will take him mid as a bit of a lane dominator. You take him mid because he's too squishy to leave as a safe lane farmer. The hero has very few defensive options and is always gankable by a competent enemy team, so you can't really ever leave him alone to just farm. Usually you want to take him mid, and then as soon as the enemy team starts grouping up, you want to group behind your sniper and fight with him and abuse headshot and shrapnel when they are strongest. That's between 10 and 30 minutes of the game, so you really want to do that. He's also a monster at defending high ground, but we'll talk more about most of that stuff later. My recommendation is that I'm going to put him at a 2-star right now. He has a build going around where he builds a whole bunch of Wraith Bands and maxes this, and it's pretty dumb. It's extremely strong, but there's a high likelihood that it gets changed with future patches, so if you play it and spam it now, it will most likely get nerfed or changed somehow, and then you'll have to go back to learning Dota the old-fashioned way and playing it without this hero. That being said, he focuses exclusively on positioning. He does not want to get jumped. He needs to be spending as much of his time attacking enemy heroes in fights as possible, so you will have to focus a tremendous amount on getting last hits in lane and then positioning well in team fights. Decent hero to learn fundamentals on, but this hero does have a low win rate across all brackets because it's extremely easy to kill. His damage potential also spikes very early in the game, but it's lower than someone like Clinkz and Drow. It's actually substantially lower than Clinkz and Drow, his single target damage potential. So, if you're looking for a late game carry, my recommendation, instead of playing Sniper, is to play Drow or Clinkz, those heroes. He's not as strong in a team fight as heroes like Luna and Medusa. He's a bit of a meme carry mid, if that makes any sense. And he's very good at high ground defense. But all in all, this hero's win rate is pretty low across all of the higher brackets because the hero is very easy to play around once you know how. Moving on to Spectre. I'm going to put Spectre at a 3-star. Spectre really has to get a tremendous amount of farm in the lane, and then she needs to use her ulti to pick up a couple of kills after the laning stage. She's going to need to back off and farm some items. Exactly what items she farms are usually pretty dependent on whatever patch is live in Dota. So sometimes she gets Blade Mail, sometimes she gets Radiance, sometimes she gets Diffusal, sometimes she's not in the meta because those items aren't strong. Her build is pretty dependent on what's good at her at any given time, but you really have to do quite well in the lane. She's also a pretty weak laner, all things considered, especially if you compare her to someone to some other heroes, any ranged hero, and a lot of the other melee carries. She's weak as a laner, but you need to farm the lane, which can make her quite difficult. Templar Assassin, I'm going to put this at somewhere in between 2 and 3-star again. Templar has a very powerful shield that blocks damage, but this can be hard countered by any number of heroes, so you really need to last pick this hero, and you need to pick it against certain lineups. You also need to do very well in the laning phase, and you need to understand how you need to itemize on a game-to-game basis, because that will change game-to-game. You typically want to get a Blink Dagger and a Desolator. Sometimes you get an MKB instead of a Desolator, and then you almost always get a BKB, but outside of that, there are some exceptions that TA has to know that you have to be ready and willing to buy items like Manta Style, if that is what's required. Boots of Travel, if that is what's required. You have to know when to take phase boots, when to take power treads. You also have to be very careful with your positioning all the time, and you can't rely on invis to get yourself out of situations. So yeah, not to mention, you have to be very good at abusing Psyblades. If you can use Psyblades well, You can double or even triple her damage output in team fights if you position your hero correctly to split her attack. There's a very fine line on TA. She's a very hard hero to master. A huge emphasis on fundamentals. If you're good at laning and you can position her well, she's very strong. Otherwise, she could be pretty weak. Terrorblade. Terrorblade is a very low HP carry who relies on illusions. Terrorblade is also very strong and he destroys buildings. He also dominates team fights in the right circumstance. Terrorblade is very good. His illusions pretty much just auto-attack whoever he's auto-attacking. He doesn't split them up too much, a little bit to farm. So kind of like Naga Siren, I'm going to put him at a 4 or 5. You ideally want to split up his illusions when you're farming, but during a team fight, you just have all your units selected and you just attack one target at a time. It's very simple micro, so I definitely recommend him. If you're not confident in your ability to micro, Terrorblade is one of these heroes where you don't really have to worry about it. As you go up in the ranks, you will need to split his illusions up to farm, but in the lower ranks, it doesn't really matter, because no one's farming fast in the lower ranks. So yeah, good hero to learn micro on, can be a very powerful carry. He is low on the old health buff, so he's easy to gank until he gets his ult. So you do have to watch out for that. Troll Warlord. Troll Warlord, I'm going to put him at 4 or 5. This hero can switch back and forth between being a ranged hero and then being a melee hero. When he's melee, he has the chance to snare people, which roots them in place, and he also gains attack speed as he continues to attack one specific target. So he's an incredibly strong laner, and if he can be melee if he wants to, with the chance to hold people down and kill them, and if that's not viable, he can switch to being ranged and just take trades with them. He also has a slow and an armor reduction, as well as he can blind people. He's very strong, and his ulti makes him too angry to die, and it's pretty great. The hero is very easy to do very well on. You can pretty much always go for items like Maelstrom into BKB, and you grab a Blink Dagger if you want to. That sort of build-up will work most games on Troll. Every once in a while you might have to go MKB instead of Maelstrom, but all things considered, very simple there. Ursa, he's another one of these heroes who is too angry to die. His ultimate gives him 5 seconds of 80% damage reduction and 50% status resist. So he just gets too angry to care about any of the spells that you cast on him or any of the damage that you do to him. He gains damage with Fury Swipes every time he attacks someone, so he's one of these heroes who can build defensive items and mobility while still having damage. Pretty solid carry. I put him at a 3 or a 4, somewhere in between there. It's easy for him to go out of position. Just make sure you're playing with your team with Ursa, and he can absolutely dominate. Vengeful Spirit, one of the only supports here in the agility category. Vengeful Spirit has a point target stun, and she can swap places with another hero on your team or the enemy team. Very useful for saving allies, very useful for mispositioning enemies. Point target stun, that's really, really nice. She does have a talent that makes it go through spell immunity, so very solid support here. Biggest thing with her is that she reduces enemy heroes' armor whilst giving vision, and she amps your allies' base damage. Essentially, this is a free desolator for the cores on your team. So, very effective at amping her team's damage. Nice stuns and setup for them to then apply their damage. Really solid hero. I'm going to put her at a 4 or a 5 as far as supports go, if you're playing with someone who's a good core player. If your core is bad, Venge is kind of rough. Venomancer. I'm going to put Venomancer at somewhere between a 2 or a 3. You do need to put these Plague Wards on a control group so that you can have them attack the targets that they need to attack in the middle of fights. You also need to position them well. If you position them poorly, you feed, and you need to be ready to go multiple skill builds on Venomancer. So one is where you max Venom Gale and Poison Sting and skip Plague Ward almost entirely, and the other build is where you max Plague Ward primarily up to at least level 3, put 1 point in Gale and put the rest of your points into Poison Sting. You might end up looking like 1-4-3 or 1-3-4. Poison Nova, sometimes you take this skill at level 6, sometimes you wait. It kind of depends on exactly how the game's going. I recommend playing him as a position 4 because his kit gives vision and cancels blink daggers. All of his damage is magical and he has no hard disables, so it's a little bit rough to recommend him as a position 3, and a lot of people can just TP out from him, so it's kind of hard to recommend him as a mid laner. He does not do enough damage to qualify as a carry, so I don't recommend him in the safe lane. So you can take him primarily as a position 4, giving vision, canceling blinks, and just bringing a tremendous amount of magic damage, putting a timer on the enemy team. Put him again at a 2-star because it's very easy to waste his abilities or feed the enemy team. He's also really low health pool, so it's very easy to kill him on. Viper. Viper is another lane dominating hero who kind of falls in the same category as someone like Sniper and or Huskar, in the sense that it's very easy for a lower skill player to still do well on this hero. Now if that sounds good to you, by all means go for it, but he needs to lane well, he needs to position well, he falls off. The later the game goes, the weaker this hero is. The only saving grace is that technically he is an agility hero, so he's not the worst as a carry, but ideally you want to take him either mid or off lane. You want to abuse his laning phase, and you want to take outer towers. I'll put him at a 3 or 4 star, but just be aware that the hero is designed to win the lane. If you're playing this hero and you're not winning the lane, you're doing something wrong. If you are playing this hero and you're winning the lane but you're losing every game, that means that you're not making enough use out of early game advantage of being Viper that you need to. So, yeah. The hero does have a huge emphasis on fundamentals. Your team needs to group behind this hero when it's strong. So it requires coordination, it requires some strategy, it requires getting all the last hits, and it requires playing carefully but aggressively, so it's easy to mess up. Weaver. Weaver is a hero who's going to rely on hypermobility predominantly, and then secondarily his invisibility from Shukuchi. Also, his ultimate brings him back to a point in the past 5 seconds before with exactly his health and mana. It's also a strong dispel. So what's cool about this is if you get hit with some really nasty spells, you can press your ult and instantly refill your whole HP. Or if you get completely bursted and die and you have buyback, you can buyback and return to the team fight. That makes him incredibly strong on the offense even without Aegis. As a carry, it just gives him an option to fight like he has Aegis if he has the money for buyback. His bugs, the swarm, also attached to enemy heroes, granting vision of them and reducing armor, so he can help your team with vision. And Geminate enables him to do a tremendous amount more damage than normal. He's an excellent carry. He's a little on the squishier side, so you'll have to be careful to pay attention where enemy heroes are throughout the early and mid game, just to make sure that you're not getting ganked. All things considered, the hero is pretty strong, so I'll put him at 4 stars. And that's it for the agility heroes. We'll be moving on to intelligence heroes. I pointed out that agility gave attack speed and armor and damage for agility heroes. Intelligence gives mana pool and mana regeneration, as well as a point of damage to intelligence heroes. So these are predominantly going to be spellcasters. We're going to see a lot of mids, and we're going to see a lot of supports. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time with the intelligence heroes.